From Disney World to some of the most massive cities and the most amazing wildlife, Florida is a place you really don't want to mess with. While some of the things you know about Florida are definitely true, just like the massive gators that inhabit every single body of water and every single Florida Man headline that you've ever seen, these are insane. But all of these things don't let us know what it's actually like to be a Christian in Florida, which is what this channel is obviously all about. So I traveled hundreds of miles to the heart of Florida to figure out what it's like to be a Christian in Florida. Welcome to Florida. Not necessarily the swamps of Florida, but pretty close. And I wanted to tell you what we're gonna do in this new series, traveling all around the world. First, we're starting in Florida because, well, I know it the best. And here's some ground rules as we get into this series. First of all, this is not a comprehensive understanding of all Christians of all areas in the entire state of Florida. It's just what we can kind of come up with talking about traditions and understanding the generalities of what it's like to be a Christian in Florida. And that's gonna be for every single place that we go in the future. And we're focusing on the evangelical church here, not any specific denomination or group here. And that's because it's what I know best. I'm a Protestant evangelical Christian, and that's what we're really gonna focus on as we go throughout the entire world. What is it like to be an evangelical in Africa versus California, New York, Canada, or Utah? It's all different, right? We have different traditions and different understandings of how we do certain things and different challenges that we face along the way. And we're going to talk about that in this episode, starting with Florida. And while most of what you know about Florida is probably wrong or at least a little bit fictional, the sheer number of rednecks is definitely a reality. All jokes aside, this is my best friend Bryce, and he's gonna be our guide for this Florida trip. So obviously this video is very different than our normal kind of stuff, but this series is gonna be really cool to be able to see the differences between Christianity in all these different places across the world is really the goal. We're gonna go over 3 key things that make Florida unique in being a Christian here, but first we're gonna ask the question,
is Florida a part of the Bible Belt?
So what is the Bible Belt? If you're a Christian in America, you've probably heard this phrase over and over and over again. But if you're new to this concept, this is the idea that several of the southeastern states are very, very conservative and Christian. But as you can see by these maps, not all of Florida is covered. And this is a really interesting piece of Florida because you find pockets of Christianity, but it's not everywhere in Florida. So Florida is a little bit different than the rest of the Bible Belt states. For example, Tennessee. In my hometown now in Tennessee, there's even nativity scenes on every single McDonald's, where you wouldn't really see that in Florida, even in the more conservative and Christian portions of it. So Bryce and I decided to do an experiment. We went down one of the normal roads in Lakeland, Florida. This is not a main thoroughfare or somewhere where there is a ton of traffic all the time. So let's see how many churches and what types of churches are on this one 6-mile road. Wait, isn't that the church we were just at? Oh, here's another one. And there's a really big church here, and then directly across the street is another church right here. And this is TBA Church. This is actually where me and Bryce both grew up and the church where I spent most of my time in ministry. So that's 9 churches in 6 miles, although I even missed a couple looking at Google Maps, and if I made it one street over, it would double to over 20 churches in this small area. So this is obviously something that we know very, very well. I spent a lot of my time in ministry here, and this church in particular is an interesting one, because as we talk about the differences between all the different churches in the area, this church in particular comes from a church that is mixed between a Southern Baptist church and a Church of God Anderson, which is a really interesting mix that nobody really thought would ever happen. But Bryce actually comes from the Church of God Anderson church, and I came from the Southern Baptist church, and that's how we all got mixed up in this in the first place. So our church is really a melting pot of different things, and we see that all over Florida.
Like within a throwing distance right here, I can throw a rock to a church there, and just over these houses here, I can see another church, all different denominations, and it is a crazy thing. It is a melting pot.
Yeah, it's really interesting because in a lot of different places we're going to talk about in future episodes, for example, Tennessee, you see a lot of the same denomination kind of appearing over and over and over again, and there's a culture of that kind of happening. But here, it's different. And it's not just the churches that are that way. I think it actually goes into how the Floridian people are in general. So let's talk about the Floridian people. What's different about them? Well, generally, most people that I know that live in Florida aren't originally from Florida. Let's ask some of them. Are you guys from Florida originally?
No. No.
Where are you guys from?
I was born in Indiana, but I grew up in Florida.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm originally from North Carolina.
Okay, very cool,
Yeah.
very cool.
Yeah.
Where are you from originally?
Chicago.
Chicago. Okay, what made you move to Florida?
My parents, they were
Yeah.
just like, Chicago's dangerous, and they were
Yeah.
just like, we're gonna move to Florida.
And what about you?
I'm from New Jersey.
Okay, what made you move here?
The sunshine.
There you go.
Yeah, I was in high school, and they had like all these brochures to come to Florida, and they had beaches and all that stuff. And so I said I'll come down, but the false advertising was there because I went to St. Leo University, so it was like nothing but cow pastures and like country.
Nice.
So yeah, it was kind of messed up. But I came for the beaches.
Nice.
Now I'm here. I will never go back.
Thanks, guys. Now, most of you know that Florida is a retirement state. From looking at this map, you can see how many people actually moved to Florida and have been over the last few years. Now, this happens not only just from people moving to Florida, but also people coming down only portions of the year. We call them snowbirds, and they come in during the winter to get away from the snow and go back to their home state during the summer, meaning they live in both states 6 months out of the year. So with this number of people coming into Florida and the snowbirds coming in and out, it causes a lot of different things to happen within the Christian ecosystem in Florida.
Floridians, we are knee deep in the snowbird season, so I want to give y'all a few tips to survive snowbird season. Number one, make sure you have 1-800-ASK-GARY on speed dial. Trust me, you're gonna need them. Next, make sure you leave your house 30 minutes to an hour earlier than you normally leave because snowbird traffic is always out. Also, watch out for that snowbird that's going across 3 lanes of traffic doing 20 miles per hour because they're about to miss their right turn even though they rode in the left lane below speed limit the whole time. Also, watch out for snowbirds stopping in the middle of busy highways, and that's on Florida.
But in terms of culture, as we talk about Floridians that are living in Florida now, normally when you say like, hey, where are you coming from? They won't say like what part of Florida they came from. They'll normally say like what state they came from outside. So like I came from Massachusetts. My wife came from Detroit. I know a lot of people that have come from Texas, or especially Hispanic communities that come from like Puerto Rico or other locations there. For you, how do you see that multicultural aspect of Christianity in Florida specifically? How have you seen that kind of play itself out in different traditions or different things that have kind of been mixed in with Floridians culture in general?
There's definitely that Southern generosity type feel. You feel that in a lot of the churches. I talk to a lot of people who go to churches up north, and they're like, we don't say hi to each other.
And I think you've experienced this because you're a native Floridian. You have more of those like Southern manners, and like you say like yes sir, yes ma'am. Sure. But generally, there's a lot of people that I grew up with that are like the complete opposite because they came from like New York, or they came from Ohio, or they came from California to move here specifically. So like it's interesting because like we talked about in the beginning of this video, Florida, yes, it's part of the Bible Belt, but it's kind of like splotchy, you get certain pockets that are really, really heavily Southern, and then other pockets that maybe feel more Northern or other, things like that. So
yeah, it's weird. Like the southernmost part of our state is not Southern.
Right.
But like from like a little further south in Central Florida up, you kind of get that. So it is such a weird dynamic, but that all bleeds into the churches.
100%,
and also, you see many different denominations in specific areas exactly for that reason. Like down south, we have the huge Hispanic community down towards Miami and all that stuff. Further north, once you get into like Central Florida, it's all still there, but definitely not as prevalent. So like here, as you guys will see, we have some Hispanic churches that are around. We actually have a TBA in Espanol here at our church because we have a large Hispanic community.
And that's really, really common in churches in Florida too, is you'll have like an English service and then you'll have a Spanish church that will have a Spanish pastor and Spanish elders and Spanish worship team. Like everything is completely different because they need to serve the Spanish community here as well. However, the different churches that you go to, you're going to find extremely different feels, not just because of the denomination or not just because of the people or the age that they're there, but because of the traditions that they're bringing with them from these other locations.
Sure. Because they want to bring that part of them here and express that wherever they're living. And for snowbirds, 6 months out of the year, they're here. 6 months out of the year, they're wherever they live elsewhere other than Florida. So you see a lot of that just being brought throughout and coming and going. And so it is most definitely a very interesting part of Florida for sure.
Yeah.
But where you're from is not the only thing that creates these unique Christian communities. In fact, there's another huge factor that plays into this. Remember, Florida is the land of theme parks, Disney and Universal. It even has several large colleges here. So several of the towns in Florida are college towns. But of course, we have a massive number of people moving here that are here for retirement as well. So this creates a pretty large age disparity.
The statistics are really interesting because 70% of Florida says that they're Christian. However, the age statistics are crazy because you see a massive dip from 18 to 24, and then you see it kind of rise and rise and rise, and the oldest generation is the most predominant in a lot of ways, and then the youngest generation is really predominant as well because we have younger families that are just kind of growing up. In a lot of the churches that we see, it's like 95% like younger families or kids or whatever else, or it's 95% like 70 plus like really old congregations that generally die out over time because so many people move here. What has been your experience kind of seeing different churches in that area?
Most definitely that, exactly. I think there's it's almost this divide because there's so many, the older generation is set in a distinct way of wanting to do specific songs and wanting to do a specific service a specific way. And we need to do things very traditionally, I would say. And then we have the newer, younger churches who are breaking that social norm. It's just a lot of retired people moving down to Florida, 100%. So they're wanting to continue that traditional church. We even have a lot of churches that have a traditional service and then a newer like
more modern service.
So like one they'll do just a piano or a choir, and then the next at 8 a.m. and then at 10 a.m. they're going to have the more modern service where a full band is incorporated, and they do it completely different, and that's in one church. So
as you can see, Florida is definitely a unique state when it comes to Christianity. From the ages that separate people to the traditions that come from all over the globe, this is really a unique place where it becomes a melting pot for Christianity. Hopefully you learned something in today's video, and let us know if we missed anything in the comments down below. Also, let us know where you want us to go next. If you want to see us travel across the world and make more videos like this, we could really use your help on patreon.com/thesnipelife. This is by far the best way to help support us to create more content just like this. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.